Hello, everybody. This is Raul Ramirez with the Catch Wrestling Alliance. So, we help you to elevate your grappling skills so that together we can keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are joining us from, whether you're watching on our YouTube channel or if you're watching on Twitch or listening to our podcast, wherever you get podcasts. Um, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and kind of get started with any kind of updates and stuff. So, unfortunately, this quarter at UCLA, there's no grappling classes just because of we had like the surge in COVID and all that. So they canceled all the grappling stuff, but I'm still teaching the kickboxing class. So I want to say that my kickboxing class, well, basically they allowed the striking classes to go on because you don't necessarily have to grapple with each other. You can be hitting pads and doing kind of like drills. We are not really hanging on to each other too much. So that's why they allowed those classes. But amongst all those striking classes, so like different styles of kickboxing, karate, boxing, and stuff like that, my Sanda class was the most popular class. So they had to have it, right? So that was good. So hopefully, as everything dies down, then we can continue with having grappling classes there again, right? So that's going to be the goal, or having catch wrestling classes back there again, because I'm sure they're definitely going to have jujitsu and whatnot. Um, so hopefully that'll be back in spring quarter. So if there's any UCLA students there, feel free to enroll in the class. I guess they also have this really cool thing called the all-inclusive pass. So you can try all the different martial arts. You can basically go to any martial arts class you want to go to, and so you can try all the different things they have, because that was the goal of UCLA martial arts. It's like it's its own department now. Their goal was to have like the widest variety of martial arts available for students in any gym in the country, right? So I guess there was, I think, one university in Indiana. Actually, it's kind of interesting because you don't necessarily think of Indiana for like having all these different types of martial arts, but um, their school gym uh like has a wide variety of different martial arts classes to take. And I guess it is like mandatory for them to be taking not necessarily martial arts classes, but taking these workout classes and stuff. So that's why that's why they have it, right? And so I believe that the guy who's in charge of UCLA martial arts, I think he was either from there or he knows all about their program at their university. So he wants UCLA uh, to beat them, basically, like to be the number one martial arts program in universities in the United States, and if not the world, really, because um, because we have such a wide variety. We have like several like karate styles and stuff, or at least several Japanese martial arts. But they all seem to be some sort of karate. And of course we have like tradition. We have like ninjutsu, and because that's the class that starts after mine. And then we have all kinds of things. And we had sumo there. I don't know if it's there now. Well, probably not now because it's like a grappling style, but all kinds of things, boxing, Muay Thai, and whatnot. So we have like the popular ones plus a lot of really obscure ones, which I think is great. And so that's why I'm doing Sanda and catch wrestling there. So hopefully we can do it again next, uh, next quarter in the spring. All right. Um, so I think that's kind of like the main thing. So besides UCLA, I'm also still teaching at Fight Science MMA in Los Angeles. It's this area called Mid City. So if you can guess, it means that it's kind of around the middle of Los Angeles. so um, so so there. So it's on Thursdays in the evening. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the main topic. So we just basically have to like it's really this is one of the myths that we have to kind of dispel, and I think it kind of shows what like kind of like if someone says this, at least to me, it kind of shows like what level they're at, right, in their understanding of grappling. So like quite often we'll post a video and like a short video, or like, on our YouTube channel or even on our Instagram and stuff like that. And so in wrestling, turning your back to someone is actually the defensive position. So you can say, like in jujitsu terminology, that's kind of almost kind of like pulling guard, because there's a lot more things you can do from like a more controlled, or we call it referee position. There's a lot more things you can do from that position, even including escaping. Right? It's actually a lot when you put someone into guard, because if you're with your back to the mat and then you have to fight against. It's a little bit easier to actually stand back up and to escape. Uh, your legs underneath you, even if they have your back. Right? So that's one of the things that you have to kind of with wrestling. So even in amateur wrestling, the Olympic style, even the United States collegiate style, the folk style stuff, um, that's why you'll see people go to that position and not pull guard. So the other reason is because you can lose by pin, but beyond getting pinned, there's so much. It's it's almost like more advantageous to go to that referee's position, or like kind of the turtle like position, than to go to your back, right? So this is one of the things that we were kind of talking about last week. So for those of you guys, um, let me see. So someone's saying someone is saying the mic is acting weird. All right, is it okay? It's on. Is it sounding all right? Is it sounding okay? Hopefully, maybe I'm just moving it around, or hopefully my cat's not messing everything up. He's walking around a lot. Uh, okay, so um, oh, now the microphone okay? Or like now it is, or now it's fine, or now it's okay. All right, I'll stay close to it. Actually, I can also do this. Let's change this here. All right, so I might sound too loud. Let me know if I sound too loud. I'm gonna stand back from it. Okay, so what we're saying here is that giving your back is not a bad thing, right? It's actually a myth to think that giving your back is a bad thing. Um, so let's try to dispel this now, because so first of all, in wrestling, even in amateur wrestling, it is still that way. So it it doesn't mean like, so like, I've talked a lot about it, where it's like we have um what's it called, the flow grappling. They had that one documentary where they showed that how they brought all the different high level grapplers from the United States, and they all got submitted, and like by their like during their events and stuff. um so it they didn't necessarily get choked out or anything like that. A lot of times it was leg locks and whatnot. So that doesn't necessarily prove that giving your back is a bad thing. But what you want to know is, like, with regards to even like your grappling strategy. So if you do something that's like in a more of a catch wrestling way, so like how we don't have points in our matches, or even if you do what's it called? If you do like no-gi stuff, right? So there'd be no points. You just try to go for a submission, right? So you want to be really uh, finding ways to get in, right? Because a lot of times, and this is the other thing that I am seeing a lot with some grappling, where it's like people are, they're not necessarily committing to stuff. So maybe they'll try to grab you, and if you resist, then they try to get their distance, and then there's kind of like this back and forth where you guys are trying to stay away from each other for a little while, and then maybe someone will get someone down or whatever. Really, if it's more of a catch wrestling like thing, that doesn't really happen. You want to really get into the match or get the match to the ground. Because we have a lot of counter moves and all that, so you shouldn't necessarily be trying to shy away or try to run away from your opponent. You should really be trying to engage and see if you can get them down or counter them if they get you down. So that's kind of like the mindset that you should have, especially for catch wrestling, and I would say in no gi. And so one of these things that you could be doing is you can be taking advantage of that whole mainstream grappling myth that giving your back is something bad, right? It's not, but you can take advantage of that in this way. So if you go to turtle, right? Say if someone takes you down, or if you allow them to take you down, or even if you kind of just you can kind of force yourself into that position, and then of course they're going to want to try to take your back, right? And they think they're going to choke you out, but your defense is too good. So there's so many things you can do, but if they take your back, even if they get their hooks in, and that they are going to commit like 110% to trying to choke you, right? So since your defense is so good, you shouldn't have to worry about that, right? And what you can be doing is taking advantage of their commitment to that position, and you can counter them, right? So there's so many things you can do, especially in a no-gi situation, because when they take your back, they tend to want to try to do the seatbelt position. So that means that, so if someone was behind me, they would have one arm. So you can imagine one arm kind of coming over my shoulder here, the other one underneath my armpit, and they'd be uh, grabbing. Usually they'll try to say if it's kind of hard to see. So if this arm is going to be the one that's around my neck, they would usually have the bottom arm covering the choking arm, right? So um, if one arm is underneath your armpit, that's the one you are going to be submitting them with, right? So you're going to be submitting them using your double wrist lock, or if they have their hooks in, and then like another position that's really common. It became popular years ago, but it's still kind of considered like a real big thing. um like say like if they have your back, and then maybe your free arm, right? Then maybe they're going to try to get your arm down, and then they're going to put their leg over it, and they think that now you have only one arm to defend yourself. That's not true. I mean, uh you still have many ways to protect your neck from getting choked. So one of them is actually just keeping your head up, and keeping your head towards your shoulder, one shoulder. That's all you really need, because then it makes it very difficult for them to get underneath your chin and to secure a like a very good choke. Um, and I wish I could show you. Maybe I'll do that as the next YouTube tutorial video, where um, if someone actually does put their arm over your arm to try to get that arm away, there's classic wrestling counters to that move. You can actually set up a cradle position, so you should be considering it as them giving you a gift, right? So this is the gift they're giving you, because they are committed so fully to their idea of that, like, oh, okay, oh, I'm almost there. I almost have the submission. I almost have the win. I almost have the choke coming in. So I've taken away one arm, like the one arm's down. And actually what you do is, so if one arm, so say if my left arm is underneath their leg, you actually can pull yourself down. And so then once I'm lower down on their body, they'd have to be reaching further down their chest to try to get a choke. You can't do that way, right? Or it's very difficult to get a choke that way. Right? There is actually one way, but don't worry about it. Don't. But if you have your shoulders up, and all these other kinds of defensive things you're doing, getting wrist control and whatnot, you really shouldn't have to worry about that. But if you're lowering yourself down, raising their leg up, you can actually set up a cradle position from there. That'll probably be one of the videos that we have to make a tutorial video about, because it's kind of hard to just describe that, but it's such a good classic wrestling move when that happens. So it's like, and that's the other thing, is like people think that maybe this doesn't happen in wrestling. It happens even in amateur wrestling, and there's counters, right? The real wrestling counters, um, classic counters that help you to take advantage of this myth that giving your back is a bad thing. And then what have we seen in real life? I keep on talking about this one MMA fight that happened in in one championship. It was this karate black belt versus Gary Tonnen. You know, like those of you who don't know who Gary Tonnen is, he's one of our best submission grapplers from the United States. And so it was an MMA match, and Tonnen got this the karate black belt back a few times, and each time the guy was able to just use like wrist control and was able to get out. All right, so I think that shows the utility of say like getting wrist control. That's so the karate guy, of course, did not seem like any high level grappler, and at least according to the announcers, I don't think they talked about him being like much of a grappler either. So and also, yeah, he didn't really try to set up any counter submissions. He set up like counter strikes, and really, if he would have um, like continued striking more, then he probably would have knocked out Tannen. He'd need him in the head, and um, he I think almost he gave too much respect to Tannen, so I think that's what lost him the fight. This whole idea where it's like you because maybe you don't know the counters, you don't know the defenses, then he didn't engage as much as he could have, and so ultimately he lost the decision. But he didn't get he didn't lose by submission. That's the main thing. So, like a low level grappler, able to just by getting wrist control, was able to uh, like get out of a high level grappler's back take. So again, even if lower level people are able to get out, are able to defend against the back take, um, it shows that like trying to avoid it or thinking that it is such a superior position ultimately is a myth, right? It's almost like we have this hierarchy of positions, and ultimately you just gotta get rid of that hierarchy, right? Because anybody can get submitted by all types of submission holds, right? And they can happen standing, they can happen to your arms, your legs, your neck, right? So your knees, right? So all these your hip locks, there's all these different things that can submit you. And so you have to see that there truly isn't necessarily a hierarchy. But I think just to kind of create some kind of principles, like to teach children or to teach like beginners in jujitsu, they really value this whole back take thing. And then if you're in a points tournament situation, then they will. Then they will what's it called? What give you like 4 points or whatever if you take someone's back. But if it's a what's it called, submission only thing or a catch wrestling thing where there's no points, then you really don't have to worry about that. And actually, you can use that to your advantage. So hopefully, this little rant, I guess, that I did, um, hopefully I can give you some ideas. I mean, hopefully those of you guys who are listening to me now also checked out our last interview last week with my good friend in Rio, Brazil, Thiago. He's actually big, legit black belt, and he kind of grew up in the jiu-jitsu culture, and he's trained with like some of the most famous names in jiu-jitsu. He's currently training, with people who are like IBJJF world's competitors and whatnot. And he's using techniques that I'm teaching him against them, and like it works, right? So it's not just like it's not like I'm making this stuff up. This is like classic stuff that's been around for hundreds of years. And catch wrestling, that's the thing. It's like catch wrestling is one of these older styles. Like judo is actually like a new style. It's younger than catch wrestling. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, again, also younger than catch wrestling. It's just like what kind of like won the mainstream, right? Um, so there's not just like what it says in the Hebrew Bible, right? There's nothing new under the sun, right? All right, let's go ahead and get to some of your comments, right? So I've been talking for like 20 minutes straight. All right. Hala. Hey, Coach Raul, new haircut. Yeah, it's actually warm here in Los Angeles. It's above. Actually, I don't know if anybody's listening from outside the United States. I wouldn't even know how to describe the heat, right? So, it's like it's 80 something. It's above 80 degrees here in LA. So, that's I don't even know in Celsius. So yeah, I had to get my hair was getting too long. It was getting hot. Okay, Jonathan Jimenez. I've noticed dude be getting tired trying to rear naked choke me. I wait and defend, let them get tired and sneak in a leg lock or a knee bar from the scramble. Yeah, exactly. That's ultimately my point. And then if we go back to that fight that I mentioned, the Tannen versus, I'm sorry, I forgot the Japanese black belt's name. If he was a better grappler, he probably could have set up a counter submission, or if he kind of just went for it, like he could probably, if he knew better, like say even wrestling, like pinning pressure, he could have done ground and pound. Like he was doing some pretty good successful ground and pound, like he kneed Tana in the face while they were down. So so there, so that shows where it's like, yes, you got to be good at striking, but there's a lot of this, what we say, like hidden jujitsu or hidden catch wrestling that can give you that advantage, right? So giving your back, can give you an advantage because people think of it as such an advantageous position, so they will fully commit to trying to submit you so you can set up your counters. Jonathan Jimenez. Defense position plus double wrist lock counter equals a true combo. That's correct. Yeah, all these different. I like the toe holds a lot also. Um, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of different, even head control things where I can counter. Like, so I told you usually they'll be getting that seatbelt position, so you can think like their arms are across your neck, and so one's over your neck, and then the other one's under your armpit. So you'll have one free arm that has the arm under the armpit. You can even do a lot of rolling over, like so you get kind of like this Nelson type thing where you can control their head, and you can get a lot of um, even counter. Say if you're doing geese, or if you're doing jujitsu stuff, you can do north south chokes and all that. You can set up pins and all that also in catch wrestling. Hala. What happens if the jujitsu guys start learning and adapting to your catch moves? Nothing really. You still have the advantage because they don't they might have, there's the thing, it's like they'll have the move, right? Usually they'll try to adapt the submission, but then they don't apply the wrestling principles. So that's the one thing that, so even like John Danaher talks about like pinning being using pinning as a way to control your opponent so you can set up your submission holds. But the thing is, um, that aspect, even though it's respected because Danaher talks about it, it's still not part of jujitsu, right? So that will always remain like like our advantage, really. And then the other thing would be um, like when people are trying to combine jujitsu with wrestling, usually they combine it with like amateur wrestling, so that has a different philosophy, a different way of doing things. So um, while while it's good, it's still not catch wrestling, so it doesn't quite have the whole wrestling submission kind of baked in with each other. So it's still kind of like two different, what's it called, like operating systems trying to communicate. Frankie Cal, what are the catch wrestling principles? Well, this is the thing. Like, one of them is that while you still are doing your wrestling techniques, right? So it's still trying to do, let's say, going like using the pinning principles, right? Trying to get someone down onto their back or controlling limbs and whatnot. You're also cognizant of the like submission holds or the counters. Also, you're not necessarily worried about getting taken down because you can set up counters. So the main thing is that, say like I talked about it earlier, it's that you're not like I said when you what you see now, and actually there was like unfortunately, I was actually looking forward to this match. It was like Craig Jones versus another person who actually beat him, but he beat Craig Jones based on criteria, like on the judges' criteria. So there was no submission holds. So they ended up like kind of standing up, clinching, and then kind of like when anybody ever tried anything, then the other guy would just like say if someone tried an arm drag, then the other guy tried to pull the arm back, and then they would keep distance. So this would be say amateur wrestling or jujitsu. This is kind of like their way of doing things. But in catch wrestling, it's like, yeah, let them take you down, or there's a counter to an arm drag where it's like you allow them to set up the arm drag and you allow them to begin the arm drag, but there's a really great counter to it. So that would be kind of like some of the different principles where it's like you should know what we call mat wrestling. So in amateur wrestling, I think that a lot of them call it mat wrestling as well. But these are the way of doing things on the mat, or once you're down on like the ground fighting, right? Or I think in judo it's called like newaza and all that. So you really have to understand catch wrestling, newaza, well enough so that you're not scared to engage, you're not scared to be taken down. You can take someone down if you want, totally fine. It usually is more advantageous to you because if you end up on top of them and you're already past their guard and you're already almost like completely pinned them. Um, so it's really up to you. Like, but you shouldn't necessarily be scared of engaging. You shouldn't be scared of letting them like grab your wrists or do arm drags or whatnot. That those are some of the principles. Okay, next question or comment. Henry Lopez. In my opinion, it takes a really good guy to finish from the back. And even then, they need a very secure double hooks or body triangle. Even then, they're still very far from the submission. Very good observation, Henry. So, yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. So it took me 20 minutes to kind of to make my case, and then Henry just puts it in like a couple, like actually in one run-on sentence, right? Like, there's a period in there, so like in two sentences, right? So like what he said is, it's like even though you might have the back and you have the hooks in or body triangle, you still don't you're not as close to a submission as you might believe, or as like the mainstream way of thinking might have you believe. Grady Bridges. Pull turtle, trap a wrist, then stand up. BJJ guys get tired real quick trying to keep you down. That's actually that kind of reminds me of what Farmer Burns said, where it's like, yeah, if you make someone like work out, basically you make them work out, right? So it's like you make them do the same movement, or you say like you push their head down and they're going to resist you, so they're going to try to pull their head back up. You make them do it over and over again, then the muscles are going to fatigue. And then once they become fatigued, you can control them, right? You have very little resistance. All right. So yeah, you can set it up where it's like you make your opponent do reps, right? And then they fatigue. Yeah, Jonathan Jimenez. Yeah, burn them out. Yep. Frankie Cal. We need a picture, step-by-step encyclopedia of hold and more. I have all catch wrestling books and they are hot garbage. Sorry about that, Frankie. Yeah, I've seen some of them too, and I have to agree. But some of these old ones are pretty cool. And there's a really good. It's actually not a catch wrestling one. It's a Indian Kushti wrestling book. It is so fat, like it's huge. Well, it's it's thick. This book's thick. It has a lot of techniques in there, and it's really cool because I think of course they're all black and white, and but it has a lot of the same catch wrestling, mat wrestling fundamentals in there. There's so many, was it kind of like so many similarities between Kushti and catch wrestling. It's like my good buddy John Strickland on the East Coast. He's the the Farmer Burns lineage holder, and he also gave me what their the equivalent of their black belt in catch wrestling in that lineage. He was also saying too, where it's like when he watches some of these Kushti videos, um, he says that seems a lot more, or that looks a lot closer to catch wrestling than even a lot of the folk style in the United States. So for those of you who might be listening in from another country, oh, actually, I did. I'm glad I'm kind of talking about this right now, is because I saw on a message board in Singapore, someone was asking like, "Oh, where can I send my kid to do collegiate wrestling?" And it seemed like this. It was a parent, and they didn't know that collegiate wrestling is kind of a U.S. thing, right? So I think what they were referring to is folk style, but they didn't know that the style that they're looking for is freestyle, because that would be what's available for them. And in Singapore, they actually have they have a few gyms that have freestyle, and it's actually because they're not necessarily like a big a freestyle wrestling country where they're like the highest level and stuff like that. They're um, I don't know. It's just they're really accessible. There's really nice people, so um, you can find like state sponsored, like schools, and like so they have a lot of children's programs and whatnot. But um, like they didn't realize that these are two different things, right? But anyway, so what amongst the freestyle and folk style, what's similar to catch wrestling is the folk style, the what we do in the United States colleges and the United States high schools. Um, but even so, with that being more resembling catch wrestling, what resembles catch wrestling even closer would be the Kushti wrestling, so the Indian traditional wrestling. So, and again, um, I think Kushti is just also a regional style. So same thing in like say like other countries, and even England, they had several uh, regional wrestling styles. So it wasn't just catch wrestling. Henry Lopez also blew out my elbow. I'll be out a week, coach. Had to add. Controlling near elbow while escaping the back is a catch wrestling move, and that is fundamental. That never gets taught in BJJ. Okay, yeah. So Henry, I know he does jujitsu as well, and he watches a lot of the freestyle stuff, freestyle instructionals and all that. So, um, glad that you're watching. And actually, I want to get a comment from you about Henry had a really good comment about kind of seeing like. Well, actually, I'll just have. Well, but he had an epiphany about what catch wrestling is, and so even though I'm talking about like these mainstream ideas, right? So he was able to understand that catch wrestling is still different from these mainstream ideas, and catch wrestling can give you an advantage against the mainstream way of doing grappling. Grady Bridges. Some have good takedowns, but tire out, breaking through a good tie up to do them over and over. Yeah, so you can end up getting them tired. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Was it Palan X8? Yeah, thick. That book. That's a that book is mighty thick, right? So anyway, Frankie Cal. Yeah, I have it, but it's a freestyle book. Okay. Are there any Palan X8? Are there any catch wrestling books that are worth reading, historical or instructional? The one that I think is really historical and actually has some of the best evidence and really cool pictures and stuff, that is the one that came out from Wigan. It is about the main coach, or Billy Riley. I think it's called like Billy Riley, the man, the legend, or something like that. But it's available as an ebook on Amazon, and I think you can get a hard copy. It's a really big book, and I'm also in that book, so which is really cool. I'm part of the written history of Wigan, which I'm really proud of that. Um, even though I wasn't a student of Billy Riley. I'm not that old, right? But but there is in the end they talk about the future of catch wrestling and the students, and so I was named specifically. So um so that's good, or that's something I'm proud of, right? So and it's a good book, and especially like people really like Billy Robinson. There's a there the chapter on Billy Robinson. So what they do is they talk about the history of the main coach Billy Riley, and then they do chapters on each of like some of the most famous wrestlers that came from that gym. And the chapter on Billy Robinson is actually one of the best written. And there's a lot of people trying to make money off of Billy Robinson, exploiting him. So um, they they actually the authors of that book for Wigan, they actually like did their research, right? Because Billy mentioned having taught in a school and in India and all that, and they called up the school, and the school has like all these different old pictures, and it's really cool. So they in the book you can see a lot of the evidence that they were able to get from like firsthand people. So it's stuff that you wouldn't find in any other publication. So it should be good. I think you might like it. Oh, so your name is Pelon, right? And then what's the X8? So is it Pelon X8? So Pelon, and yeah, Pelon says Pelon is bald in Spanish. That's true. That's true. That's what we used to call my uncle, Pelon. Holla, awesome. When are you releasing your self-defense course? Actually, not sure yet because we have a few courses that we want to try to get out. We want to try to do um, the the pressure passing volume 2, but yeah, anytime any so I really want to try to get all of that out as soon as possible, so I'll just be trying to work on that uh, as much as we can. All right, so yeah, those are the main things, and hopefully today, so keep on asking your questions or making your comments. I'll get back to that in a second. So for those of you who might just have joined right now, our main topic was that in mainstream grappling, we or mainstream grappling has this idea where giving your back is like is taboo or something you shouldn't do. But because if someone takes your back, right, they are so fully committed to choking you out that they give up a lot of opportunities where you can counter submit them, right? There's all types of, like, say, even I mentioned earlier where there's different uh, counter cradles, counter double wrist locks. You can use kind of like the Nelson like head grabbing techniques where you can flip over and get them into north south chokes. You can do counter toe holds and whatnot. So there's a lot you can be doing there. Jonathan Jimenez. Sakuraba gave up his back all the time and he did just fine. Yep. So I think that's a good example because people seem to still really like Sakuraba. I think that's another funny thing where it's like you'll see a lot of jiu-jitsu people like in love with Sakuraba, but then like they don't do what he practiced, which is, I think, it's kind of funny. Um, let me see. So Pelon. I first heard you on Grappling Central podcast, and then when I joined Southpaw, I saw you there. Your channel and Uma Fight Camp helped me open my eyes on BJJ marketing. Wow, Pelon, I didn't. Oh, thank you for telling me that. Telling me your connection. Um, so for those of you who don't know about Southpaw, I interviewed the main guy from that podcast, so you can look in our history in our podcast playlist. So and we talk about, actually, so like it's kind of what you just said, Belon, about marketing and stuff like that. Um, there's even a lot of people who are marketing themselves as being catch wrestlers, and so the main guy from Southpaw, Sam, he went through one of these programs where people who are coming out of that program, even though it's not a catch wrestling program, they're claiming to be catch wrestlers all of a sudden just because they're not doing like mainstream jujitsu. So then so people are trying to market themselves all kinds of ways to make money, right? Hala, how do you get so good at catch, Coach Raul? Did you train a lot in the past or do you still train? I've been training since like the 1990s. So I've been doing all kinds of. So first, I started with Chinese kickboxing, which has a wrestling aspect, and I also did Chinese jacket wrestling and a bunch of different kung fu styles. And so then when I wanted to do some grappling, of course I did jujitsu because that just like everyone in the comments, they're talking about how like it's so easy to find a jujitsu school, but it didn't match kind of like my understanding of grappling because I had more of this top-down approach from the Chinese styles, and so I had to research and I found out about catch wrestling, and so I ended up training with Billy Robinson. I also went to train with him privately before he passed away in Arkansas where he lived. And then I was part of the first group admitted to train in Wigan when they first started, when they first opened up again to teaching catch wrestling, because they were just doing freestyle. And then Coach Roy, who is the actual successor of Billy Riley, the man I mentioned, which is the coach of not only um, Coach Roy, but he was the coach of Billy Robinson and the man who calls himself Carl Gotch. Right, his name is not Gotch. He's not a Gotch, right? But he's really famous in Japan. Um, so the successor or the guy who took over the gym from Billy Riley, who Billy Riley kind of named as a successor, is Roy Wood, and so he wanted to make sure that this art got passed on, and I was one of the few accepted to learn and train there. And so yeah, I've went back to Wigan for like 5 years and competed for them and all that. Um, yeah, but so yeah, I've been and I still train, right? I still roll, and I'm still always practicing. Martial arts is kind of like this lifelong thing, right? And really, if you like, so Coach Roy, like, what was really cool, even in his 70s, he's able to still demonstrate a lot of the techniques and stuff. So it's one of those things where it's like if you stop moving, then that's when you like that's when your body stops working for you. So you have to keep like it's almost like a use it or lose it kind of thing. Jonathan Jimenez, Saku is the reason why I do what I do. Yeah, so Jonathan, he attends my class at Fight Science MMA. Marcus Krantz. Unfortunately, there are no catch wrestling gyms here in Sweden. Well, maybe you can be the catch wrestling instructor there in Sweden. So you can do our online program, invite us out to do some seminar, or come here to LA or whatever. See if you can't be the one then. Grady Bridges. Sako used to put his head in between the ropes so they couldn't choke properly. He practiced in the ring and they weren't used to it. Yeah, there's a bunch of cool things where it's like, again, it's like since there is like this mainstream way of doing things, few people kind of divert from the mainstream. So whenever you do something that's not mainstream or like unorthodox, then it just really confuses them, and you can get some really great results. Jonathan Jimenez. Um, I saw him beat four Gracies, and that's all it took, right? Jonathan Jimenez, the real snake pit. Yeah, that is the real snake pit. Belon. It was weird when I started BJJ. I was actually told my style should be top control and smash since I'm a big boy, but all the techniques we were learning were off the bat. That's yeah, exactly. That's a great point. So, yes. It's almost like and it's almost like the rhetoric doesn't necessarily match the actual practice, right? So, very true. Jonathan Jimenez, Wigan boys. Yep. So, even though I wasn't born in Wigan, I've been there many times training. Marcus Krantz. Would love to take catch wrestling to Sweden. Trained in MMA when I was younger, and now I mostly train freestyle wrestling. Yeah, so sad, right? So, and there's a lot of great things about freestyle wrestling. But yeah, if you can have something where it's like the submissions are baked in there, or even like your like because sometimes a lot of what happens when like an amateur wrestler goes to a jiu-jitsu gym, they can still get submitted because a lot of times the amateur wrestling takedown, which is great, but sometimes it still leaves like an arm open, so the jujitsu person, even though they fall back onto their back, maybe they fall back and doing like a double wrist lock on you or like a kimura type counter or even a guillotine type counter or whatever. But yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great. So if you want to think about joining our online course, that's up to you. Because basically, I only want people who want to be there to be there. So it's it's kind of open like that, where I just want people, especially I want to have this service because again, yeah, there's only a few uh, like legit schools on the earth around the planet. So um, like if you happen, and there's so many people who don't live near LA or my buddy John Strickland on the East Coast or Wigan and whatnot. So we have the online program that's available through our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. We also have a bunch of different courses up there. So like Hala mentioned earlier, we want to try to get the self-defense one up there. We already have the volume 1 of pressure passing up there. So for those of you who don't necessarily want to join the academy thing, we also have standalone courses. So you can take any of those. All right, Pelon. I'd be down to join. I just need a partner. Yeah, we actually have one person who uses his dummy because he lives kind of in a remote area. So he has one of the grappling dummies. Um, so yeah, but it is good if you don't have a partner, you can start off with a grappling dummy or something, and then hopefully you can make some friends who want to grapple. Gary Bridges. Oh wait, one more. Pelon. So I guess Pelon lives around the Chicago suburbs, so he would love to have a partner. So if both of you guys can train in the CWA Academy. So so get at him, right? Grady Bridges. I do freestyle and BJJ, and when I invite friends to my private studio, we are mixed. So do pins or submissions, so everyone has a way to win. Yeah, it's yeah, it's just like catch and super fun. Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Marcus Krantz, thank you for the information. I will check out your website. Cool, thanks. That's all we ask. So if you're serious, then feel free to join. We'd love to have you, but you know, kind of leave it free like that, where it's not like a crazy commitment or whatever. It's like people ask like, oh, you got to whatever join for a whole year or whatnot. It's like a month to month thing. And so then we just ask that like so we have the fund. You'll get access to a few courses at first. What I would ask is that you heavily look at the fundamentals courses, and then once you get everything like where you can do it proficiently, then you show me that you can send me some short videos of you doing each technique, and then I give you access to more advanced stuff. But you do get access right away to more courses than just the fundamentals. So There's even a course up there with my buddy John Strickland when he was here in LA. So it has a lot of good stuff in there, and then it just builds off of that foundation, and you get more and more access. So yeah, again, up to whoever wants to be there, right? Because that's the thing, you'll get some people that maybe they're excited, but then they don't really progress past the fundamental things. So think about it, before you join, because you definitely would want to, like, like we want to create like legit grapplers, and yeah, that's the other thing. I've seen um, a lot of these people marketing themselves as catch wrestlers, and then you just pay them like $50, and then all of a sudden your school's like a certified school like a certified catch wrestling school and whatnot. So we're not going to do that. You actually have to put in the work. Maceo El Morro. Hello, just catching this now. Any material off fighting off your back from the guard, half guard, and if you're mounted, where would it differ from BJJ? Wow, maybe you should just wait to play back the thing from the beginning. But basically, we're talking about giving your back is not. It's like it's a myth, right? Where people think that like, oh, it's one of the worst things that can happen. It really isn't. And because people commit so much to trying to choke you out if they have your back or whatever, then they actually set themselves up for a lot of counter moves. So, like counter cradles, counter chokes, counter double wrist locks, counter toe holds. There's a lot of things they set themselves up for, but you just have to know these different techniques, right? So, but ultimately, we're just trying to say that it is a myth that everyone kind of like um, thinks so much of the back take, right? And then during the talk we gave a few examples of like some pro fights where it's like you have a high level, someone who's recognized as a high level grappler, unable to submit low level grapplers just once they've taken the back because. In this case, it was one fight and one championship where a Japanese karate black belt just hung on to Gary Tonnen's wrist, and the guy was not able to finish him. So stuff like that. But you may feel free to play back the beginning. Once we're done, or go ahead and ask a few more questions too if you want. But so while I'm letting people write their questions and comments, if you want to support us through our YouTube channel, feel free to join. We have a bunch of other videos that you can join if you join at the medium tier. Even if you join at the basic tier, I still give you access to some videos. But if you do the medium tier, you get much more access. So we have I think you can see if you go to our YouTube channel. I believe if you go just to like the YouTube channel itself and they show a bunch of the playlists and stuff that we have, I think one of the top playlists towards the top of our page shows a bunch of the videos that we have for members only, and so that would be what you could view if you're the medium tier, right? So all of that's appreciated. So yeah, and it just goes into like just our what we do on our website, and also now that COVID is really dying down, like even in LA, we're I guess next week we're going to be like rescinding a lot of the mandate stuff. So let's just get back to having catch wrestling events ethically also too. It's like we have a bunch of people who might be doing some catch wrestling events or different tournaments and whatnot. But there are the potential to spread disease. You shouldn't um, take that lightly. You should do things as ethically as you can. All right, so I think it's been about an hour. So thank you everyone for watching. And so our goal here is to help everyone here elevate their grappling. So like we said, it's like the mainstream thing. A lot of times isn't necessarily the best thing, or it's like the mainstream way of doing things kind of blinds you from these other types of techniques, other types of strategies. So with catch wrestling, it seems like for the foreseeable future, we are still going to be the unorthodox way of doing grappling. So even though I think someone, I can't remember who it was, but one of you asked a question in the comment where it was, um, like even though jujitsu is taking a lot of our moves, usually they're taking a lot of submissions, right? So they're never going to take the entirety of catch wrestling into jujitsu, right? It's just like another language. So like English is never going to take the entirety of French into the English language, even though we use a lot of French words. It's still not like we still haven't absorbed French completely, right? Um, so that's the main point. Oh, a couple of you were asking questions. Marcus Krantz, thanks for an interesting stream, even though I only catched the end. Yeah, thank you for being here. Ichi-san, um, sorry for my lack of knowledge. Is there a difference between Lancashire, Carnegie, and American hook wrestling? Well, really, another word for catch wrestling is Lancashire wrestling because that's the part of England that it was developed in. And American hook wrestling is my buddy John Strickland's school in the East Coast. So that would be considered kind of like the Farmer Burns lineage of catch wrestling. So it doesn't mean they're separate. That's the thing. So Farmer Burns got beat by the Brit, right, Tom Connors, and then they actually spent a lot of time training together. So even what Frank Gotch, so Frank, I don't know if you can see it. Whoever's watching the video, Frank Gotch, the guy back there behind me in the picture, um, said that Tom Connors was Farmer Burns' catch wrestling teacher, right? So we have that lineage, that connection from England to United States to Burns, and then that lineage goes down to my buddy John Strickland on the East Coast. He's in the state of South Carolina. So American Hook Wrestling is the name of his school. All right, you're welcome, Ichi-san. Okay, so um, thank everyone. Feel free to check out our website. We'll have more courses up there really soon. Also, feel free to become a member of our YouTube channel. All right, so all of it's really appreciated. So we'll try to get back to doing more matches and stuff this year, definitely. So, all right, so thanks for watching, and together we'll help you to elevate your grappling and keep real wrestling alive.